Thanks for purchasing either the Hang 'em High or the Trac-A-Rod version rod racks. This will be a proper instructional video on how to mount our rod racks, whether you're mounting them to the ceiling, to the wall, either horizontally or vertically, can go either way. And both of these mount very universal, with the exception of the Hang 'em High would be for a ceiling or overhang shelf mount like I'm going to replace today behind me. All right guys, now we're going to install our Trac-A-Rod rod storage system. So when these come packaged in the straight from Dubro Fishing, your hooks and hoops are already in the gear track. Just a little tip and trick, what we're going to do is we're going to pull these out of the track and we're going to thread in those little set screws from the back side. It's just much easier, much faster, so we'll show you guys that to save you some time. In the actual track itself, there is holes pre-drilled for screwing into whatever wall surface we are going to mount to, whether it be the wall and or the ceiling. So as you guys can see, you get two different size set screws with the Trac-A-Rod rack. The small screw is going to go with the hook, and the big screw is going to go into the hoop. So what you're going to want to do is on the end of these on these set screws, there's an opening on one end for your Allen key. You're going to want that facing up. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your hoop, you're going to take your longer set screw, and just start screwing this in from the back side and get it almost all the way up to the bottom. And then that's going to leave you, as you can see, that set screw is just popping up through the top, and that's going to leave it so that way when you slide this into the track, you have enough room for clearance on the bottom side to go past your screws. And when you get this set in place on your track, Dubro supplies an Allen key that fits right into this, so you could snug it down and lock your hoop right into the right spot. So we're also going to do the same thing with the hooks. The Allen side up towards the actual hook end, and we're just going to pre-thread these in and get them pretty close to the bottom side, almost flush. And as you guys can kind of see, this threaded rod is coming through the top of that hook. That you should be good to go. You could slide this into your track, and then you could screw in with that Allen key that Dubro provides for you to set your location of your hooks in correlation with your hoops. Alright guys, I got my hoops and my hooks preloaded with the set screws. Now I'm ready to mount my track system here on the wall. So what I did is I brought over one of my longest rods to make sure that I got clearance on my butt end and my rod tip end. That way I'm not going to be forced or hit anything or not be able to fit them in. So it's always nice to just bring one of your rods over or measure one of your rods, or if you know the measurement of it, like this is a 7'6", so I know at least I need 7 foot 6 inches to have full clearance on my rod. And with the Trac-A-Rod system, you're going to slide your butt end into that hoop end, so you're going to need a little extra space on your rod tip end. So when I'm laying this out, I just want to make sure that I have plenty of room to do so. And I'm mounting these here because these are my grab and go rods. These are the rods I'm going to use all the time. So I'm going to mount them here. I usually throw all my gear, tackle boxes, crate, things like that up here on my bench, so I can put my rods in here first, throw the gear right in front of it. That way it's kind of protecting that stuff. But and then also you want to consider which way you want these hooks to face. So because I'm doing it in a horizontal fashion, I want the straight piece of the hook facing down, and then the flexible rubber piece where my tip goes in to be facing up. So that way my rod is resting on the stiff part of the plastic. My rod resting right here on the stiff part of the plastic. This piece flexes so that way you could get your rod tip ends into this hook. So this is going to face up and this is going to face down when mounting in a horizontal situation. When it's vertical, it doesn't really matter which way it faces because your rod tip is going to rest towards the hook side of the actual hook. So now that I've determined my spacing on my actual gear tracks, what I want to do is measure up how high I want to come up off the bench or up off the wall or whatever it may be. With the situation I'm faced with, I'm screwing into plywood, so I don't really need to find the studs. But if you are drilling into drywall or you don't know where your studs are, you'll want to use a stud finder. If you can't hit a stud, you're going to want to use a drywall anchor. And when we're using drywall anchors, all your local hardware stores or home improvement stores carry those, and they have a weight rating on there. So if you're using some heavier duty rods, for instance, trolling rods, saltwater rods, things like that, little bit bigger, beefier rods, you're going to want to use a heavier drywall anchor. If it's just bass rods, spinning rods, crappie rods, bluegill rods, things like that, it doesn't have to be as bulky. It doesn't hurt to use a heavier duty drywall anchor because it's going to hold to whatever pressure that you put under it by the weight of your rods being in your rod rack. So from measuring this out, I determined I want my rail 4 inches above the bench. So I'm going to mark that 4 inches. I'm going to put the bottom of my rail at that mark, and I'm going to start screwing through these pre-drilled holes. In the 2-foot section, you have 5 pre-drilled holes, and that's so you don't have to use all of them. So I'm going to use at least 3 of these holes in the back side of my track. So that way it'll hold my rods nice and secure no matter what weight I put under them. You could definitely get away with doing 2 if you don't have a stud in between there, but you should use a minimum of 2. 3 or 4 doesn't hurt. For this instance, because I'm using some bass rods, I'm just going to use 3 screws, mount my first track, and then I'm going to move over to the second one. So I measured my 4 inches up. I'm going to start with screwing in the bottom side of my track, and then we're going to want to put a level on this so that way we know we're nice and straight. Alright, so now that I got the bottom screw in and I got it nice and snug, you could still pivot that track. I'm going to want to put a level on that and make sure I'm nice and straight and level. And we're going to do that on the other track, so when we put our rods in there, we know they're nice and straight. Alright, now I got my gear track in here. It's nice and straight. I'm going to move over to the other one and get that mounted the same way I did to the first one. Alright guys, now I got my 2 tracks set. It's time to set my hoops and my hooks. And what I'm going to do is set my hoops first, evenly spaced, so that way I can come back over, set my hooks, line them up, and make sure everything's straight, and we're good to go. So what I'm going to do is slide my first hoop in all the way to the bottom, set that, and then I can start setting the rest going on the way up. Alright guys, so I got my first hoop set. I'm going to slide my actual rod end in here first. And I just want to kind of figure out my spacing between, you know, reel handle, things like that. So that way, when I go up the line, I can just measure and set each one as I go. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put a hook in. And that looks pretty level to me. And it is, putting a level on it. So I'm going to set this. Now I got my rod in. I got it leveled out. Now I can go along and do each one individually and set them and just check my measurements as I go. So that way I got nice even rods going up the wall here. Alright guys, I got all my hooks and hoops preloaded. I'm gonna space out all my hoops evenly first, and then I'm gonna put rods in there, and then I'm just gonna go through and adjust the hooks so that way I'm nice and straight as I go up the wall. So I got my bottom one adjusted. I'm gonna do my top one now. So on your hoops, so about 2 5/8 of an inch will get you evenly spaced out going up the rail, with the bottom hook and the top hook being at the outer end of the rail. That'll give you even spacing between the hoops. So I'm gonna put a rod in each hoop going up, one at a time, and I'm gonna adjust the correlating hook with it on the other end. I'm gonna throw my level right on top of that rod blank just to make sure I'm right there and level. Not a necessary step, but I'm super particular, so it's something I like to do to make sure my rods look nice and straight on the wall when they're stored away in the Trac-A-Rod system. So now that I leveled 2 of these out, I can find the space in between these 2 hoops and measure that as I'm going up to get an evenly spaced, perfect level line going straight across as I go up the wall. So if I take my tape measure, I can measure from plate to plate, and it's 2 1/2 inches, basically what we had on the hoop end. Now I can measure that going up. Obviously I could set my top one all the way up to match the other side. And now I can measure 2 1/2 inches to the next one, which is right there. Tighten up that set screw. Measure, tighten the set screw. When I go to do this last one, I should have 2 1/2 inches on both sides. 2 1/2, 2 1/2, and 2 1/2. Now I got all my hooks and hoops set. I could finish putting my rods in and we will be all done. There you have it, guys, the Trac-A-Rod system from Dubro Fishing. Get your rods from being bunched up in the corner, the possibility of broken tips, broken lines, things like that. Gets them up off the corner of your garage floor onto the wall, keeps them nice and organized, looks presentable, keeps them out of the way, and keeps them safe. So I hope this video helped you guys. Hope this is something that intrigues you guys as well, as far as something that you could do super easy to do and anywhere in your home, whether it be the garage, the ceiling of your garage, in a utility room in your house, your fishing room, your man cave, whatever it may be. Nice, cool system to keep your rods stored and safe.